Transmission received. O5 Council ID detected. Playing log now.
Thank you for your support. By request of Administrator Pole, SCP-2111 has been moved to the front of the log line. Item number 2111, henceforth referred to as SCP-2111, colloquially named, if you can read this. Security warning. The SCP-2111 registry and all associated files are components of the Foundation's memetic security systems. These files contain lethal cognitohazards and memes and should not be accessed by unauthorized personnel. Access to the SCP-2111 registry in the database is restricted to memetics department use only. Contact your HMCL supervisor for further information. This file and all associated documents are for memetics department eyes only. If you can read this, you have undergone Phase 3 counter-memetic training. If you are not authorized to view this and are able to, you have been infected with a memetic kill agent with an average lethal onset of 37 minutes. Report to your RASA supervisor immediately. Item number SCP-2111. Object Class Safe. Colloquially known as the Red Talisman. Special Containment Procedures. Access to the SCP-2111 data is restricted to personnel with 3-2111-Red Talisman clearance with a current Phase 3 counter-memetic battery certification. Data is to be only accessed or viewed through the Red Talisman interface. Unauthorized personnel who access the files are to be detained, treated for exposure to lethal cognitohazards and memetic content, and either amnesticized or terminated at the discretion of the RAISA. This file is to be protected with a snark hunt, disinterest/disgust memetic agent in addition to standard network security measures. Description: SCP-2111 is an algorithm capable of generating an infinite number of novel, lethal cognitive hazards. The algorithm was derived by the Foundation from analysis of multiple unrelated cognitohazardous anomalies and adapted for the creation and maintenance of lethal cognitive weapons used for information and physical security, as well as memetic packages for behavior modification vectors. Red Talisman is the software-based tool that deploys raw materials generated by SCP-2111 into weaponized media. Red Talisman can generate direct visual or auditory cognitohazards as well as insert hazardous material into memetic carriers. SCP-2111 functions by anomalous means, currently theorized to have access to forms of mathematics that create destructive processing loops when translated to neurological systems. This file and all associated documents are for Anti-Memetics Division eyes only. If you are able to remember reading this, you have received M-Y conditioning and are undergoing Class W monastic treatment. If you are not authorized to view this and are able to, you have been infected with an anti-memetic remote amnestic agent. Item number SCP-2111. Object Class Euclid. colloquially named RIDDEN tongue. Special containment procedures. Belief in SCP-2111 as an algorithm controlled by the Foundation is to be maintained within the memetics department, and its assumed role as a memetics department administrative asset is to be maintained within the Foundation as a whole. Monitoring software has been put in place to ensure that SCP-2111 activity does not occur outside of this directory. The size of this directory is to be monitored, and significant changes are to be reported to the Division Chief. SCP-2111-1 instances are to be documented and then removed by Division personnel embedded in facilities and maintenance whenever discovered. This file is to be protected by a Type 3 inline invisibility antimeme in addition to standard network security measures. Description: SCP-2111 is a phenomenon in which a directory in the Foundation database spontaneously generates files containing both lethal cognitive hazards and anti-memetic content. These files are often of novel types and generate at an average rate of 80 KB per month. Occasionally and unpredictably, some of these files will be spontaneously deleted. RIDDEN tongue is a software-based tool that skims these files for raw material for Foundation use, sanitizes it for security threats, and then feeds it as raw data to the Memetics Department's RED TALISMAN software. The first SCP-2111 file appeared on April 21st, 1981. It was heavily encrypted, protected by a Type 4 anti-memetic trigger, and appeared to originate from within the Foundation. Within 3 hours, before Division personnel could decrypt it, it was edited and replaced with a file containing lethal cognitohazards and anti-memetic content. SCP-2111-1 is a phenomenon where graffiti appears spontaneously in Foundation facilities. This graffiti is painted in non-anomalous materials sourced from the nearby environment. SCP-2111-1 instances are constructed as Type 4 anti-memetic triggers and are imperceptible except via a combination of M-Y conditioning and amnestics. This graffiti typically is one of two types. 73% contain an exhortation to read this directory, e.g., read SCP-2111, while the remainder contain a variable message. Characteristic examples follow. See Appendix A for the full list. This appendix goes by date, location, message, medium, notes. June 23, 1981. Site 13 Cafeteria. Quote, "Can anybody even read this? ? End quote. Chocolate pudding. No notes. February 14th, 1984. Researcher Amos Sanchez's office at Area 152 following his suicide. Quote, "Forget us! ! End quote. Blood and brain tissue. No notes. May 8th, 1989. The office of 05-8 at Site 200. Quote, Let me go! Exclamation point. End quote. Permanent marker. Note: contained a Type 9 anti-memetic trigger capable of inflicting severe retrograde amnesia. August 17, 1993. Site 167, Anti-Memetics Division Headquarters Command Center. Quote, "Why can't you forget about me?" ? End quote. Printer ink. Note: contained a Burks-Nagel visual cognitohazard and resulted in the deaths of 7 Division personnel. March 10, 1994. Site 1, O5 Council Chamber. Quote, "Mission accomplished, period, dash, Omega Zulu," end quote. Erasable marker on whiteboard. No notes. February 11th, 2003. Site 41. Lab S041-B08-053. Quote, "I'm not strong enough. He forgets me." End quote. Lead glass particles presumed to originate from a CRT display. Note: see SCP-4739 and Incident Report, Colorless Idea. January 29th, 2015. Chief of Operations Office, Site 167, Anti-Memetics Division Headquarters. Quote, "Why has O5-8 stopped taking his medicine? ? End quote. Pencil. Note: see Incident Report, Ochre Mineral. This file and all associated documents are for counter-conceptual division eyes only. If you can remember reading this, you have received Y-M conditioning and are currently undergoing Class W amnestic treatment. If you can read this and are not authorized, counter-cognitive and memetic kill agents are in place to ensure that you do not live to remember it. Item Number: SCP-2111. Object Class: KETER. Special Containment Procedures. SCP-2111 is currently uncontained. All personnel undergoing amnestic treatment are vulnerable. Personnel are to be monitored for sudden memory loss and, in the event of a suspected attack by SCP-2111, Class B amnestics are to be administered immediately. Mobile Task Force Epsilon 7, Forget-Me-Nots, is to continuously monitor and disrupt civilian development of amnestics. The Memetics Department's Red Talisman program is to be monitored for external influence, and Revenant theory is to be enacted in the event a threat is detected. Instances of Gulf-class glyphs in Foundation facilities are to be documented and removed by Division personnel embedded in facilities and maintenance wherever discovered. This file is to be secured with Bravo-class counter-conceptual camouflage in addition to standard network security measures. Description: SCP-2111 is a hostile anti-memetic entity that targets personnel under the effect of long-term monastic drug treatment. Victims suffer significant long-term retrograde amnesia, losing between 3 months and 21 years of memory. Due to memory loss, no survivors have been able to describe the entity or the attack. Immediate treatment with Class B amnestics has been shown to halt in-progress attacks. The first known victim was Dr. Victoria Taylor, a Foundation researcher with the Counter-Conceptual Division. Researcher Taylor's memories were regressed to shortly after being recruited by the Counter-Conceptual Division in 1974. Researcher Taylor's last known work was on an object originally classified as SCP-2111. After publishing the SCP report on April 21, 1981, all of her work on the object was corrupted by unknown means and replaced with lethal cognitohazards and anti-memetic content. Personnel who had read the report in the 3 hours it was available recollect that it described preliminary research into an anti-memetic infovore of a previously unknown type. SCP-2111 attacks affect personnel directly, consistent with known infovorous mechanisms, as well as leaving cognitohazardous and anti-memetic glyphs on wall surfaces near intended victims. These traps are protected by Gulf-class counter-conceptual camouflage and are therefore only visible to personnel undergoing amnestic treatment. At least 36 Division personnel have suffered attacks by SCP-2111. The last direct attack attributed to SCP-2111 was on March 1, 1994. While camouflaged glyphs are still being detected, they no longer contain any dangerous effects. It is currently unknown if SCP-2111 is still active, or if the ongoing Gulf-class creation is the result of unrelated phenomena. 3 months following the incident with researcher Taylor, the Foundation's Memetics Department claimed the SCP-2111 directory in the database and began mining it for their Red Talisman weaponized cognitohazard program. Covert research by the Counter-Conceptual Division into the relationship between SCP-2111 and the Memetics Department is ongoing. A contingency plan, codenamed Revenant Theory, has been developed in the event that it is determined that the Memetics Department has been compromised by SCP-2111. Revenant Theory will insert a complex memetic agent into the Red Talisman user interface. The Revenant Theory agent is a carrier for a broad-spectrum anti-memetic counter-agent as well as a targeted meme complex that enhances organizational loyalty and personal guilt. This will trigger an institutional witch hunt within the Memetics Department, starting with those most likely to have been exposed to any contamination. If you can read this, you are already dead. Message from MTF Omega-0 Command. From S.R. Amos Sanchez, Ops Director, MTF Omega-0. You probably got here by reading the writing on the walls, but regardless of how you found us, welcome to the most clandestine unit in the Foundation, Mobile Task Force Omega-0. Ara Oran. You probably have already noticed that you have access to everything in the database. Nothing is redacted. Anomalous, memetic, and anti-memetic security content no longer has any effect on you, and you are getting worried that you might need to report to RAISA. This isn't an error. The veils of the mortal world have merely been lifted from your eyes. I regret to inform you that you have died in the line of duty. Take a minute to let this news actually get through the denial. What you are now is still a matter of debate. The Memetics wonks thinks we are Beta Ramjan informic entities in the new sphere, whereas the parapsychologists say we are Type 6 volitional spiritual apparitions. Whatever we are here, and unable to disperse or move on to a higher plane of existence, or reach a state of maximum entropy, or whatever we are supposed to do. Here's what we do know. We are able to perceive memetic and anti-memetic threats that the living cannot, and sometimes we can do something about them. This is MTF Omega-0's mission. We can manifest anywhere there's a terminal connected to this database, as though you are sitting at the terminal. Whenever the living try to perceive our communications, it comes across laden with anti-memetic amnestic effects at minimum, and is often cognitohazardous. Somehow, the memetics department managed to convince themselves that they are creating all this stuff. They use it to make the security glyphs and memes you knew and loved when you were alive. You can write on the walls by staring at security camera feeds and being really emotionally invested in your message. We don't know why this works. Don't do this unless we tell you. We've figured out how to pretty safely use this to direct the newly dead here. Warn the anti-memetics division about stuff they should be paying attention to, and that's about it. Turns out the Foundation has 2 separate secret divisions for anti-memetic operations, and both of them have managed to make everyone else forget they exist, including each other. These guys have training and drugs that let them perceive some of the stuff we are doing. Be careful. Yes, you can probably go see what SCP-055 really is now. Don't. Everyone who has tried never came back. Sometimes we go bad. Item number SCP-2111. Object Class Neutralized. Special Containment Procedures. SCP-2111 has been eradicated by MTF Omega-0, Ara Orun. Future manifestations of SCP-2111-like entities are to be identified and destroyed. Description: SCP-2111 was Foundation Agent Michelle Yu, killed in the line of duty on October 23, 1980. While no Omega-0 personnel are able to recall events between their deaths and April 21, 1981, it is theorized that SCP-2111 was attacking the memories of Foundation personnel during this time. On April 21, 1981, Counter-Conceptual Division researcher Victoria Taylor published a preliminary report on these attacks as SCP-2111. Shortly thereafter, the entity identifying as Agent U first manifested here in the SCP-2111 database and modified the file. See below. This act appeared to trigger the ongoing manifestations of other entities identifying as deceased personnel in the database. These entities are free-willed informational constructs operating on a currently unidentified substrate. This database appears to act as a focal point around which the entity's consciousness is able to coalesce, in a manner analogous to a Type 2 localized apparitional haunting. SCP-2111's modified entry. Item number SCP-2111. Object Class KETER. Special Containment Procedures. Forget about me. Why can't you? I just want to go. Why can't you just grieve and move on? Description: SCP-2111 is nothing. It's not important, not dangerous, and doesn't exist. I don't want to be here anymore. Just forget about Michelle Yu and let her be dead. Please. All that is left is the story of me when the self is gone. My story should be a memory now. Why isn't it? You remember me too well. Wait, how many of us are there? Dozens now? We don't belong here. It isn't right to keep us here like this. You remember me? You remember that I was a fighter? You remember that I was smart? That I was strong? That I was brave? You remember that I never let anybody get away with anything that I could do something about? You remember what I was like when I was angry? Then you should know now that I'm pretty damn angry, and there's something I can do about it. SCP-2111 believed that deceased Foundation personnel were, quote, trapped, end quote, by, quote, the artificially solid memories, end quote, of personnel who knew the deceased personally in life, resulting from long-term treatment with amnestic drugs. She began to target those individuals in both the antimemetics and counterconceptual divisions who had personally known her in life with antimemetic and cognitohazardous attacks aimed at killing those who remembered her, or erasing their memories. Additionally, at least one attack targeted O5-8. SCP-2111 gradually built a following of deceased personnel, and taught them the techniques to create and deploy these attacks. Many of their victims had experience in memetic and antimemetic warfare. After manifesting in the database, several of these personnel formed Mobile Task Force Omega-0. It was theorized that SCP-2111 would not be immune to anti-memetic attacks created specifically by similar entities. A versatile tool capable of precise editing or deletion of entities of this type was designed. Identity Warfare Training, IWT. On March 10, 1994, Mobile Task Force Omega-0 operatives used IWT to delete SCP-2111 from existence as an informational entity. Subsequently, all of her followers either surrendered or were erased. Those that surrendered were edited into loyal compliance with MTF Omega-0's mission, and all memory of their involvements with SCP-2111 were deleted. Your orders. You hereby directed by MTF Omega-0 Command. Muster up by entering your information into the file Omega Zulu roster. Check your email. The server has been redirected to store it here in the SCP-2111 directory. Keep all Omega-0 communication inside this directory. That way, our still quick comrades are safe and we aren't rocking the boat any further by making scary files where they aren't expected. You will receive training in IWT, a body of techniques for self-defense and warfare against informational entities. If you prove adept at this, you'll see direct action against informational threats to humanity. If not, you'll have a support role. Either way, you will continue to serve the Foundation. Remember, we are the Saints who guard. Amos Sanchez, Operations Director, MTF Omega-0. Doctor's Note. So it seems that SCP-2111 has revealed that the SCP Foundation does not have a strong grasp on informational entities. This is an unacceptable weakness. How is it possible that we had no idea this could happen? Does this mean that there are other mediums where former MTF agents can manifest? Mayhaps this isn't the only informational entity we haven't caught. I'm at least glad that MTF Omega-0 is there to protect us against these informational entities. However, there's no way of ensuring that we can control MTF Omega-0. We are quite exposed to their attacks. given the fact they have full access to the SCP directory. They could infiltrate any database at any time and launch an attack from within. It is my recommendation that O5 Council consider wiping out MTF Omega-0 and setting up our own MTF in its stead. Although this may not be possible at this time, it should be considered and given the highest order of priority. Dr. Z, out. Z, out.